Hello, good morning, friends and clients of Bharjil Geojit Financial Services. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all once again to the webinar series of Bharjil. We had one just about 2 weeks back, and we are happy to have another webinar on the Indian markets and also to bring and introduce the portfolio services of Geojit Financial Services. From the time we met about 2 weeks back, there has been, we did of course discuss the COVID situation at that point of time, but then it has taken a turn and there is now a sort of a great concern that is being expressed by clients and by many market specialists in terms of how this is going to pan out and how this is going to impact the overall economy and the markets as a whole. Some of the GDP data the revised data that have come over the last few days suggest that the traction is not going to be very large, probably 1.1 to 0.2% impact may be there in the GDP this quarter or for the year. But then we need to understand how the whole situation will pan out during this year. In order to do that, we have one of our a close associate and a partner with Geojit Financial Services, Mr. Balaji Vaidinath, who will talk to us later on the Indian markets and also specifically on the COVID situation and how this is impacting the markets. I am also pleased to have with us Mr. Satish Menon, Executive Director of Geojit Financial Services. Welcome, sir, to this webinar, and this is probably the first time you are going to address, I think, the clients of Bharjil in a formal way. So thank you very much for sparing your time and being with us today. We will also have a short presentation on the PMS products of Geojit Financial Services, the range of products that is being offered by them. And after that, we will have Mr. Balaji address our clients. Please also, I take this opportunity to welcome our clients from Muscat and Kuwait. Thank you for taking your time off to be here. I also take this opportunity to wish Ramadan Kareem to all of you. I hope all of you are safe and healthy. I think this will be more required for people in India. But I think here also, I think we have to be on our guard because the numbers are still not to a level that we normally want it to be. With this, I will now, before we invite Mr. Vijay to talk to us on the PMS products, I will now request Mr. Satish Menon, Executive Director of Geojit Financial Services, to say a few words and kickstart this webinar. Mr. Satish.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Krishnan. Thank you. And very good morning to all the GCC clients of Geojit and its partners. What Krishnan is correct. It has been a long time. I have spoken to Middle East clients. Of course, in earlier times, maybe 12, 15 years back, when I was a regular visitor to GCC countries, you would have met some of you. Thank you, Krishnan sir. I would like also to thank Shamsuddin sir, who's also on this call. Thank you, sir, for joining this call. Vijay and Balaji, of course, will be making a review presentation. But before that, I thought I'll just say a few words about how our PMS as a product has been doing. So so we have three products in our PMS basket. One is the Advantage product, which is primarily into mid and small cap. Then you have this Freedom portfolio, which is into large cap plus mid small. And then we have a Dakshin portfolio, which is based purely on the companies which is located in the south of India. So Dakshin is particularly a newer PMS scheme, which came into existence only 2 years back, whereas Advantage and Freedom, we are running it for Advantage, we are running for 17 odd years, and Freedom for now 11 years. To talk about the performance of these two schemes, which is running for some time, I'll tell you the 1 year performance right now. And 1 year, of course, we have beaten all the benchmarks. For Advantage, the 1 year return is 87%. This is as of yesterday. And for Freedom, it is 49%. And for Dakshin, it is 66% compared to a Sensex of 50. So Advantage over the last 1 year has only matched the index, but the other two, Freedom has matched only the index, but the other two has beaten the index in a larger margin. I don't want to talk about the 3 months return. 3 months return is also very good compared to the Sensex, but 3 months is too short a period for us to talk about how good we are. So let us leave at 3 months return. But one particular point I would like to mention is on the since inception return. Advantage Fund, like I said, we started in 2004. And since inception return for Advantage is 16.95 compared to Sensex return of 12.63. So that is a big, wide variation of 400 basis point. Freedom return, which we started in February 2012, has given 15.02 as of yesterday, compared to same period Sensex of 11%. So there are also 400 basis point extra CAGR return. Dakshin, I will not talk because it's very new. Dakshin, we have given over the last 2 years 10.26. So ever since we started, both the funds have given very good returns compared to what the benchmark has given. Of course, we have faltered in between. If you look at the 3-year and the 5-year period, we have just been able to either match the Sensex or slightly lower. But what happens in these markets, most of you would be aware that you stick to a particular portfolio, and if your conviction is right, you add on this portfolio, and a time will come when the market will reward you. So that is what has happened over the last 2 years. We were very strong with our conviction in the stocks we had invested. So it did not move in this 2-year, 3-year period. But when the market cycle changed, when the large cap growth compared to small cap growth, the ratio change, we started performing. Like I said, our Advantage portfolio is primarily into mid and small cap. So there is always a lag period. Normally we see the large cap going first and then the mid and small cap joining the rally. And we have seen over the years, mid and small cap BMS portfolio will definitely beat the large cap portfolio over a period of time. So as far as the conviction is concerned, we are very clear. We invest in good companies with a good growth horizon. And we stick to that companies unless until something drastically changes. So when you look at our portfolio, the churning is hardly anything. We have stocks in our portfolio which we have bought 5, 6, 10 years back also. Going ahead on the market, I'm sure Balaji will speak more about the market and the composition of large cap and the mid cap and the small cap stocks. Going ahead with the market, I feel with a horizon of 2 to 3 years, the market is going to be very good. I think quite a few pundits are saying that this decade also would be for stock markets. In the last 1 year, the markets have gone up by 50, 60, 70%. Of course, the base was lower when the market crashed in March 2020. March 2020 compared to March 2021, the index itself is up by 70-odd%. That doesn't mean that the fuel or the steam is over. I think we still have a long way to go. For FII money, though of course slightly negative in the current period, FII money will continue to pour in India. Mutual fund assets in India are growing. Mutual funds now will start getting positive inflows in India. So all this money will come to the stock market. Plus, post the COVID issue, earnings of the company will also grow. I'm not sure what is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 months. Nobody can predict. I don't know the second wave is going to affect how much of this economy. My general feeling is, since the governments have said that we will not get into a complete lockdown, I feel there is not much fear in the markets to come. But I'm particularly sure in the next 3 years to 5 years, the markets are going to be much better than what we see today. So my request to, one more point before I end. So we are not, we are invested in the stocks up to 90%. For example, in our Advantage portfolio, we have still 10% cash. In our Freedom portfolio, we still have 5% cash. So we are also aware that something could happen. We are also aware that some companies can correct, and we are keeping this cash chest with us to be invested when the right time comes up. So with 90% of cash invested, we have these returns which has beaten the benchmark over the last 1 year or from the inception, of course. But we still feel there is opportunity for the markets to grow in the coming period. So my request to all of you is to listen to Balaji. I'm sure he will instill more confidence in you about the market which is going to come, and look forward to your contribution in the PMS scheme of Geojit. I'm here for any questions. We can have questions after Mr. Balaji finishes his part of his presentation. All the best. Thank you for attending this call, and happy Ramadan Kareem.
Thank you, Mr. Satish, for those wonderful introductory remarks. In order to understand the PMS products and the offerings of Geojit, I will now request Mr. Bijoy to run a small presentation for the formal presentation on the products of PMS that Geojit offers. And in case that you have any questions, clarifications that you may have on these products, feel free to deal or talk to one of your relationship managers or financial advisors. They'll be able to give you more updates on each of the PMS strategies that Geojit is offering. I now request Mr. Bijoy to run his presentation on the PMS, please.
Thank you, Krishnan sir. Balaji, can you just unshare your slides?
I think when Mr. Bijoy is joining, I would request the participants to please put your questions only in the Q&A box of the which you can see in your screen, because taking questions from the chat and Q&A may be rather difficult. So request all of you to put your questions only on the Q&A module of Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you, Team Burjeel, for giving us the opportunity to speak on portfolio management services. I'm sure the participants who are sitting here know about portfolio management services. We are part of Geojit Financial Services Limited. Of course, I don't have to give anything detail about the company. We are almost 34 years experience in the capital market. We are a listed company in both NSE and BSE. PMS is a SEBI registered license. We have a registered license with the SEBI. It's a regulated product. As for the SEBI,
please put it on slideshow because it is not coming on the screen fully.
Oh, is it? Okay, one second. Is it clear now?
Vijay, press F5.
No, please continue. I think there is some, it's not coming on the screen.
What he's trying to say is please put it on slideshow.
Yeah, I have done that. I've done slideshow, then I put this F5 as they are required. I can see full screen in my screen.
Okay, please continue. I think it's still visible, not an issue.
Yeah, so I was saying it's a SEBI regulated product, and as per SEBI, the minimum ticket size is 50 lakhs. As all of you know, 2 years back, it was 25 lakhs, and SEBI keep hiking the minimum ticket size. Basically, SEBI wanted matured investors to come into the capital market. Of course, we
Can I, Vijay?
Yes. Yes.
Our slides are not moving. I can see a static page only.
I'm in the.
No, we still static page only for me also.
Can you stop on?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
now
Now it changed. Now it changed.
Now it changed. Okay. So is it full screen now?
No, it is still.
It's not full screen for me. It is still inside the PPT, but at least the page has changed.
Okay, let me just try once more the full screen, or else I have to show in this one.
No.
Is it? It's no.
Please continue, Vijay.
Okay, I'm sorry for the technical error. Yeah. Just to give you some brief on the portfolio, we basically aim on finding out the right businesses with the visionary management, where we can scale up those companies who can have the potential to scale up their progress, and we look at the horizon of between 5 to 6 years. And the schemes are basically for those investors who are looking at a wealth creation for long term with the highly growth potential companies. Investment focus are basically we invest around 25 to 30 stocks in the PMS, and generally we don't go beyond 10% allocation in a single stock. Some of the areas which we look into it, we ensure we go for a high ROE, low leverage, that is less debt companies, and we are particular on the quality management sides. Identifying the companies with companies which are undervalued and who is yet to discover their intrinsic value is some of our strengths. What we look at, we ensure we stay invested in the stocks. We ensure we get into the companies at the mid cap when they are in mid cap, and we wait till it grows into the large cap set. And especially the P rates, when it's not expanded, is the time which we found out the such stocks and get into and get the maximum potential in those periods. A quick view on the different three funds what we have. We have Advantage, Freedom, and Dakshin. Advantage is the fund which is started in 2004. We have done last 1 year performance as of March 31st is 100%. We are one among the 36 schemes in the last year who have done 100% above performance. Advantage basically focused on small cap and mid cap, and Freedom portfolio is started in 2012, generally into large cap and mid cap and some amount of small cap. Dakshin portfolio is a multi cap. As the name says, this fund is basically the companies which is headquartered and registered in 5 South Indian states. And we have only those stocks with fully market capitalization of less than 50,000 crores. And Dakshin portfolio is a passive portfolio, and it is managed by MSCI, that is Morgan Stanley Capital International. And it's having 25 equally weighted stocks. These are a few picks in Advantage and Freedom. Some of the stocks what we have been which we have been invested and which have been invested for quite a long time also. Few picks in Dakshin. These are a few of the stocks which is the companies which is completely based out of these 5 states, one of these 5 states of South India, and which have been doing extremely well. Our pricing is as competitive as possible. We have both the fixed pricing as well as we have the variable pricing. I'm not getting more detail into each of this pricing. Once we take it forward, that time definitely one-to-one we can explain to the product. We don't have any entry lot, custodian lot, and all those charges. Of course, we have an exit lot, but we don't have a lock-in period in this product. However, whenever we sell this product, we categorically tell the clients this is a long-term product. Any client who get into a portfolio management service need to keep in at least 4 to 5 year horizon. Yeah. With this, I conclude this slides on PMS. I'm sorry there was a technical error and I have taken some extra time. Thanks, Krishnan sir. Maybe towards the end, if there is any particular query, I can take it forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bijoy. I'm sure there would be questions coming up during the session, which we will address to the respective members. It's now time for to bring our keynote speaker in, Mr. Balaji Vaidyanath. To many of the seasoned investors with us who has been with us for the last 10-12 years, Mr. Balaji needs no introduction. Many of you know that he was the star fund manager of with Sundaram Asset Management, managing the Sundaram mid cap and small cap funds. And he has more than 15 years experience with an impressive track record over diverse strategies. And he has been delivering consistent returning and outperforming portfolio benchmarks by over 100% across all strategies till he relinquished charge in Sundaram Asset Management. One of the key factors that distinguishes Mr. Balaji is that his ability to stay ahead of the broad market in bearish phases and identify value stocks that one needs to be invested, and his high conviction and holding period. He's also known for his low churn and willing to stay in cash. And he is probably one of the true value investor fund manager, I would say. And it has been a pleasure to have known Mr. Balaji all these years. And when I was just having a word with them before the session, I think he was also understood the key concerns of investors today, which is what is the impact of the COVID going to be. And I think he's going to cover that in his presentation to us to give his perspective on how this is going to impact in the near term and how the markets are going to be performing based on these factors that we are now that we are facing at this point of time. I now request Mr. Balaji to take over the session. He would speak for maybe 20-30 minutes, and after that we will have a brief Q&A session. There are already questions have started coming in. Let me at the outset also tell you that he will not be taking any stock specific questions. If there is any possibility of getting a feedback, we will try and get it done from him separately. But in this session, we will please uh, restrict your questions to the markets and maybe to sectors that he would be able to address. So I now request Mr. Balaji to address our audience. Thank you, Mr. Balaji.
Thank you, Mr. Krishnan, for the introduction and kind words. I hope you are able to hear me loud and clear, and you are able to see my screen.
Yes.
So thank you so much. A warm welcome to all the people who have joined the webinar. I hope that at this juncture, you and your family are safe and healthy, which is the utmost priority at this point in time. I also take this opportunity to wish you all a Ramadan Kareem. And I would like to begin the presentation. So here we have basically split the presentation into two aspects. The first part where I'm talking a bit about COVID and where we stand. And in the second part, I'm talking about how it's actually impacting the markets going forward. So I'm just presenting certain basic stuff about COVID in a very condensed manner. To start off with, so this is basically publicly available data. So during the last peak of last year, we were touching about less than 1 lakh cases per day. The peak was on 16th of September when we had about 98,000 cases per day. As of 23rd April, we are having about 3.3 lakh cases per day. So now, is it something India specific or has it been a global phenomenon? If you actually track the waves globally in very many other countries, we are seeing a situation where the second wave is at least 3 to 4x that of the first wave. So going by that phenomenon, looks like India is also following the same path of the second wave being 3x that of the first peak. So we are at about 3.3 lakh cases per day. Already we are hearing news about COVID cases peaking in Mumbai after the lockdown that was actually imposed. So it looks like the curve is beginning to bend once again, although this current mutant is very, very infectious, which I will cover later. So unsurprisingly, some of the popular, highly population density cities like Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, Thane, etc. are reporting cases in the range of 8,000 to 26,000 in a day. And some of the key states like Maharashtra, UP, Kerala, etc. are reporting about 50% of the overall cases in India. So this is the current situation where we stand. So this is something what I spoke about. Maharashtra is leading, unfortunately, in this COVID thing with almost 67,000 cases, followed by UP, Kerala, Delhi, etc. So 5 states are accounting for about 60% of the total active cases in the country. Looks like as the spread increases, it may actually go to some of the other states which are seeing very little cases at this point in time. So that while because of our high population, it may seem like as if the numbers are very, very huge. But if I were to look at it from a point of view of cases per million, which is a metric that is being tracked widely, India's cases per million is very, very similar to that of US and UK. So for every million people, about 250 people are currently infected. Although having said that, some of the densely populated cities like Delhi are seeing much higher cases of about 1,300 cases per million population. So that is a bit of a concern. But if you actually look at the red line over here, and then you can actually see US and Europe, where at one point in time the United States had almost 800 cases per million people, and Europe also at some point had almost 400 cases per million people. This was sometime during last year. So obviously the question mark is about the vaccination and where we stand from that point of view. currently India is vaccinating about 35 lakh doses in a day. There have been about 13.5 crore Indians who have received at least one dose so far. And there have been at least 2 crore Indians who have already received both the doses. So if you look at it, most of the vaccines have been administered to healthcare workers, frontline workers, etc. And there has been a data that has been put out by ICMR, which says that people who have been vaccinated with at least one shot of Covishield or Covaxin, the rate of infection falls down to as low as about 0.04% and 0.02%. Similarly, for people who have taken both the doses of the vaccine, the chances of infection has come down tremendously. So that is a slightly positive news in the overall scheme of things. So where do we stand from the point of view of vaccine at this, in terms of capacity, etc. So that is something we need to address. So if you actually look at it, we need about 156 crore doses from a vaccination point of view. So today, the Serum Institute, which is actually manufacturing Covishield, is having about 6 crore doses per month. And then you have Covaxin of Bharat Biotech, which is about 3 crore doses per month. So we have already given license and for manufacture of the Sputnik vaccine of Russia. So currently 3 players, which is Dr. Reddy's, Gland, and Panacea, have gotten the approvals to manufacture Sputnik in India. There are also more pharma players expected to get approval for the Sputnik vaccine. So apart from that, Cadila is coming out with its own DNA vaccine. Once the data is submitted, the approval of which is expected sometime in June. So this is the current situation that we are in. So totally we have about 7.7 crore doses, including Covishield and Covaxin. The government has actually approved 3,000 crores of funding for Serum and about 1,600 crores funding for Bharat Biotech. So in about 1 quarter, we are actually seeing doubling of the capacity in terms of vaccine production in India from about 7 crore doses to about 13 crore doses, including 4 crore doses from Sputnik. So by the end of June, we must be manufacturing close to 13.2 crore doses every month. By the end of September, this is almost doubling again from 13 crores to about 22 crores, including 5 crores from Sputnik. Mind you, we have not factored in any other imports, which is basically expected from Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Moderna, etc. So we have not factored that in. So there could be one or 2 crore doses worth of vaccines which could be imported as well, which we are not taking into consideration. So so we are expected to ramp up our capacity from 7 crores to about 22 crores, more than 3x in the next almost 6 months or so. So by the end of September, we should be around these levels. So these are some of the countries which have already taken heavy amount of vaccination. So Israel, for example, has achieved a 60% vaccination level already. 60% of the population has been vaccinated. UK has already been vaccinated. The population has been vaccinated to the tune of 45%. Israel has, actually done away with masking requirement in public places. Similarly, there are very many other countries where, the vaccination levels are increasing quite rapidly. So in the next 6 months, we can see India, which is currently less than 10%, should be close to almost 30-40% very soon. So what is the difference between the first wave and second wave? It is very imperative to know about this and learn this. So first wave, and then we saw the huge market meltdown in last year with the Nifty and Sensex tanking, with Nifty actually falling down to 7,800 levels, etc. There was huge volatility, which we all would have observed as market participants. So first wave was an unknown. We never had a worldwide pandemic. We always had localized pandemic like SARS, MERS, etc. So this time, this was a worldwide pandemic. So there was huge amount of volatility in the markets. So in the second wave, we know that the second wave usually peaks around 3x to 4x of the first wave, with a very, very sharp downward curve post the peak is achieved. During the first wave, the treatment protocol was basically trial and error. If you remember last year, one of the anti-malarial drugs, hydroxychloroquine, was thought to be one of the medicines for COVID. Later on, people realized that it is not as effective as initially that was thought. So there was a bit of a trial and error. So now in the second wave, we are seeing that the case fatality rate is falling. There is an established treatment protocol. There is basically higher availability of remdesivir, favipiravir kind of drugs at this point in time. During the first wave, we did not have any vaccines. During the second wave, the frontline workers and the healthcare workers have been vaccinated. Typically, a vaccine takes about 24 to 36 months to come into the market. But in the case of COVID, due to fast track approvals, etc., the vaccine has come within 12 months, and vulnerable groups have been vaccinated. During the first wave, the case fatality rate of mutants were rather unknown. During the second wave, we know that the mutants are very infectious, but they are less virulent in terms of the fatality rate. During the first COVID wave, there was an unknown government policy support. During the second COVID wave, there seems to be some policy assurance. I'm talking about overall from a global point of view rather than any country specific point of view. Why am I speaking global in this case? Because markets overall, capital markets are driven by global flows rather than any specific local flows. During the first wave, we had a complete lockdown. During the second wave, the lockdown is much more localized rather than a complete lockdown that we saw during the first wave. Corporate sector preparedness, was very little during the first wave. During the second wave, we see corporate sector preparedness being far higher, with people actually doing work from home. Meetings are more virtual in nature. Supply chains have been that much more planned in advance. So people have already sorted out their second source of supply chain. Initially, they were sourcing products from one country. Now they are sourcing products from multiple countries. And for crucial products, they are setting up their own manufacturing facilities, etc. Also, on the first wave, markets were very nervous on the rising cases. In the second wave, we saw rising cases in UK and US, but markets were rather, quite buoyant even during that phase. UK is a classic example of stock market. What happened to the stock markets? Because from the period of November 2020 to February 2021, rest of the world was having a party, including India. Everything was opened up. Clubs, temples, religious places, weddings, deaths, everything came back to normalcy in India between November 2020 to February 2021. Whereas if you take the case of UK was under a stringent lockdown between November 2020 to February 2021. Despite the lockdown, as you can see, in the month of November, December, the cases were actually peaking. It was COVID cases per a million people was almost touching 1,000 in UK. But the graph above is basically the performance of the FTSE index. So the FTSE index was actually up 25% from end of October till about end of March, despite the COVID wave hitting them the second time, and they were going through a tremendous lockdown. It must be noted that this lockdown was very specific to UK. Rest of the country was not under a lockdown. So the point I'm trying to make is that if India were to go for a lockdown, which anyway has been ruled out by the authorities, even if we were to go for a localized lockdown, is this going to take a huge impact on the stock markets like last year? The answer is no. If you go by the UK example, that if a single country were to lock down and the rest of the world were basically working and the central bank policies continue to be benign like how it is, then the stock markets may not take a huge hit like it did last year. So people who are actually waiting for a huge correction like last year, you may not necessarily see that kind of a correction happening again in the markets, because typically stock markets don't correct twice for the same reason. So this is basically, we have bucketed the performance of various sectors in terms of COVID. So tomorrow, if there were to be a localized lockdown or a full lockdown, obviously the most impacted sectors would be aviation, hospitality, media, real estate, and retail. And then the sectors which will have medium impact will be banks and financial services, auto, consumer durables, energy, and industrials. The sectors that are expected to have least impact, or in fact, there could be some positive impact because of COVID, will be IT, pharma, specialty chemicals, diagnostics, home improvement, telecom, etc. So unfortunately or fortunately, while these sectors are suffering, they do not have any representation on the Nifty or Sensex. So if you were to take the representation of Nifty or Sensex, it is only filled with these two buckets, including IT, pharma, banks, auto, telecom, industrials, etc. You can hardly find any representation of the most impacted sectors, including real estate, aviation, hospitality. So on the one hand, you may say that, look, where economy is not doing great, but the markets are not correcting. It will not correct. It will not correct because what is happening is when there is COVID, the stronger guys are going to get even more stronger. So I want to give this as an example. So think of this as a classroom of 30 students. Out of the 30 students, you have 5 guys who are always scoring high marks in the examination. They are the favorite of all the teachers, and they have been very well prepared amongst all kind of circumstances. Suddenly one day the teacher comes to the classroom and says that, children, today you have a surprise test. So and the surprise test, so obviously the guys who are going to pass the surprise test are the ones who are already well prepared. So these are the sectors that will do very well, and the guys that are going to fail are the ones, which are basically the most impacted, and these are the guys. So when the representation of these guys are more in the Sensex and Nifty, obviously these companies will continue to perform more and more. I will give this to you with another example. So take the case of TCS, Infosys, Wipro. TCS, Infosys, and Wipro are the 3 IT giants of India, as we all very well know. This is basically the travel expenses. For IT companies, travel expenses is a very, very huge component in their overall cost. So this is the figure for March 2000. This is the figure for March 2020. That is from April 2019 to March 2020. So if you actually look at the travel expenses for March 2019, all the 3 companies put together spent 7,684 crores. These are basically the software engineers who are flying from Bangalore to US to UK to Australia to very many other countries. So TCS, for example, spent 3,500 crores in March 2019 full year. They spent 3,200 crores in March 2020 full year. So the 3 put together have spent almost 7,700 crores on travel expenses in 2019, and about 7,800 crores on travel expenses in 2020. Now you look at the same data for March 2021, that is the whole of last year. From April 2020 to March 2021, TCS has spent only 1,000 crores. Infosys has spent only 500 crores. Wipro has spent only 500 crores. So from a 7,600 crores of spending on travel, this has come down significantly to about 2,100 crores, which means that these 3 companies alone have saved about 5,700 crores on travel expenses. Has their revenue come down? No, it has not come down. Because if you look at the revenue from 2.88 lakh crores, it has increased to 3.26 lakh crores. Have their margins come down? No, it has not come down because of savings. So there is a saying called one man's meat is another man's poison. So what is beneficial for IT has become a bleeding for aviation. So if you are holding companies in IT sector, obviously the stocks will continue to perform well. So obviously when the TCS, Infosys and Wipro do well, it will have a positive impact on the Nifty and Sensex because they have a significant weight. So no point saying that economy is not doing well, but market is going up. Market will definitely continue to move up because of this particular reason. And if you look at the overall savings, travel expenses to revenue, which was about 2.7%, has plummeted to just about 0.7% so far. So if you look at the IT weight in Nifty is about 17%. Whereas if you look at the airlines weight, not only in Nifty, in the entire BSE 500, the weight is only 0.2%. While airlines may report loss, these companies may do extremely well. So this is something that is very, very important for us to realize from an overall equity point of view. This chart is giving you some amount of information about the cross-border flows into emerging markets, etc. So as you can see, there was a significant drawdown in terms of flows during last year COVID time period. This was for emerging markets, including China. Later on, as the COVID cases started subsiding, we saw significant flows happening into emerging markets. Now, once again, we are seeing a small blip in the overall flows. This is not India specific. This is including all emerging markets, that there has been a little bit of profit taking by the FIIs because there was a huge, there has been a huge increase in interest rates in the US. The 10-year yield, for example, has moved from about 0.7% to about 1.8%, and then it has then cooled off to about 1.6%. So you may temporarily see some amount of dip in the FII flows, but over the long term, I think the flows will continue to be extremely positive. From an earnings point of view, I think aggregate earnings growth was very, very strong in the Q3. There was very high commodity prices. When the lockdown happened in March, and then it was later on opened up in the month of May, for the period of May, June, etc., the demand was very high. Then the discourse at that point in time was that it was because of pent-up demand and it may not sustain. Then again, in the month of July and August, we saw significant growth continuing. Then again, this growth continued into September, October, etc. during the festive season in India. Then again, into New Year, we are seeing huge demand that was generated going forward. So it was not only just a pent-up demand, but it was a sustained demand. So what we are seeing now at this point is not a problem on the demand side. Now we are seeing a problem on the supply side. The problem on the supply side is due to localized lockdowns, etc. So that may have a very temporary impact on the profitability of the companies, maybe for 1 quarter. But as the cases peak and more vaccination drive is being done, you will see the infection rates falling down and the economy beginning to recover, which anyway saw during March when the GST collections in India was as high as 1.24 lakh crores. Similarly, the net direct tax collections was also quite high and greater than expected. Indian 10-year yields is about 6%. It must be noted that interest rates are at a 15-year low as far as India is concerned. And, we are seeing a situation where real estate is beginning to make a comeback. So all the proxy real estate plays, including cables, wires, switches, gears, ceramic tiles, paints, etc., are expected to do extremely well. So this is a very important slide that gives you a picture of where we stand from the Indian market point of view. So this is what we have plotted is a Sensex market cap as a percentage of total BSE market cap. So the denominator is the BSE market cap. It's aggregate of all the listed companies on BSE, which is almost 6,000 to 7,000 companies. So the market cap of all those companies have been aggregated in the denominator. In the numerator, we have aggregated the market cap of the 30 companies, which is the Sensex companies. So if you were to plot the Sensex company market cap as a percentage of the total BSE market cap, as you can see that this ratio has always oscillated between 40 and 50%. So Sensex market cap touches a low of 40%, and then it usually touches a peak of about 50%. So what it means is that at 40%, the mid and small cap segment, that is the non-Sensex stocks, have had a great party in India. So it is time to move out of the mid and small cap stocks and move into large cap stocks, because we may see some correction in the mid and small cap stocks. Similarly, what this ratio means at 50% is that the Sensex stocks have done exceedingly well. They have outperformed the mid and small caps. Now it is time for the mid and small caps to do well, and then the Sensex will take a back seat. So now, as we are speaking, we are now currently in a situation where, sometime during last year, the Sensex market cap touched 50% of the total market cap of the country, which means that just 30 companies in India are almost 50% of the total market cap of the country. So it peaked over there. It gave an indication that, the Sensex stocks have had a great party. Now is the time to move into the mid and small cap. So accordingly, we did increase our exposure to the mid and small cap stocks. And as expected, this ratio has once again fallen from 50 to 45, which is what is reflected in the overall returns. If you take the Advantage portfolio, which is skewed with the mid and small caps, they have done significantly better than the Freedom portfolio of large cap stocks, simply because the mid and small caps which have underperformed in 2018 and 2019, and the first half of 2020 have started outperforming again. So we expect that over the next 2 to 3 years, this particular ratio will once again come and touch to 40%. Till that time, we feel that the mid and small caps will continue to do extremely well going forward. Having said that, to be on the safer side, we also have raised about 10 to 11% cash in the portfolio. This cash we are basically using to add on to those sectors which are impacted on a temporary basis due to COVID related issues. We believe that, 1 or 2 quarters down the line, currently, things looking extremely gloomy with lot of cases, lot of infections, etc. But if we were to fast forward it 1 quarter or 2 quarters down the line, we are looking at a scenario where, we see that, the vaccination production is extremely ramped up. Increasing amount of citizens will get vaccinated due to the extreme vaccination drive. And, that will obviously lead to lesser infection rate. And automatically we are seeing pickup in the economy and markets going forward as well. So to summarize, basically, India is currently underperforming on second wave due to some temporary outflows. But we feel that this might be a 1 quarter phenomenon. So this correction, if any, can be used as a buying opportunity. As it is, we are not seeing a huge correction. The Nifty touched a high of about 15,500. Today, Nifty is at about 14,500. So, it has corrected to about 5 to 7%. To expect a very severe correction, it may not necessarily happen. So, whatever mini corrections that we are seeing, so we believe that those are part of the larger bull market that we already are in, because there has been a broad-based recovery, not only in a few sectors, but every sector starting from metals, information technology, chemicals, pharma, etc. I think this decade belongs to India's manufacturing. We humbly believe that India's manufacturing, because of the overall China plus one strategy, Indian manufacturing will do extremely well because of our current tax regime, where the tax rates for newly set up manufacturing facilities is one of the lowest in South Asia. So today we are seeing that the global shipping rates, freight rates, etc., are very, very high due to the disruption in supply chains. Many people want to basically sort of have one more source from whom they can buy goods. So especially on the pharma side, specialty chemical side, etc. So we believe that these sectors will do exceedingly well going forward. Information technology will again do exceedingly well going forward. Real estate is picking up, considering that interest rates are at a 15-year low, and our rental yields are one of the lowest in the world. So, and there has been a significant consolidation in the real estate industry for the last 10 to 15 years in India. So in a nutshell, putting all this together, I think it makes a lot of sense to be constructive on India. Yes, India is always a 2-step forward, 1-step backward story. India, there is always the things are exaggerated on both sides of the spectrum. So I think, while things may look a little gloomy at this point in time, if you fast forward it to 1 or 2 quarters down the line with increased vaccination drive, etc., so and a peak rate of second wave of infections, I think economy as it is was going at a reasonable speed, and the current slowdown will once again, it will start picking up, and you will see world-beating growth coming from India. So these are our views. Thank you so much for your time, and happy to take any questions if any.
Thank you very much, Balaji, for this extremely lucid presentation. You have covered most of the concerns, especially the impact on COVID and how that impact is going to be reflected in the markets. This is one of the main concerns that many investors keep asking us almost on a daily basis. Thank you very much for those clarificatory points. Just a few questions have already come in. I've started consolidating them. Just a quick question. As a few people are asking in terms of what should be one's short-term strategy in the markets right now. What would your advice be that if people have say 25, 50 lakhs of funds right now, what would be the short-term strategy? Or if there is a portfolio, is it wise for them to book partial profits, or do you think they should re-enter the stocks? So how would you advise an investor, maybe let's say an equity investor, from a short-term perspective or a short-term point of view?
Short-term strategy is for an investor should be to be ready with the shopping basket at this point in time, and be prepared for buying some of the stocks that may correct in an exaggerated manner because of COVID. Because these issues, as I said, are transient and it is not permanent in nature. So whether there is COVID or no COVID, there are always opportunities in the markets. So there are some sectors which will do extremely well during COVID, and there are some sectors which may be very bad during COVID. So we can ignore those sectors basically, as long as there is a strategy where we are avoiding aviation, hospitality. Yes, it is unfortunate that I'm saying this because these sectors are generating a lot of employment. But that aside, from a strategy point of view, right? Any strategy that is overweight on IT, pharma, specialty chemicals, real estate, and the proxy plays, etc., will do extremely well over the next 2 to 3 years or so.
Yeah, there's a question on the banking sector. You are not very positive on the banking sector, in spite of people mentioning that most of the NPAs issues have been addressed by the Q4 of last year. So, from the banking sector or from a financial NBFC's point of view, what is your view for this year on the performance of this sector?
So on the banking sector, basically, it's not like I'm negative or can you see my screen? Sorry.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. So on the banking sector, I'm neither too positive nor too negative, because the reason I say that is because many of these guys in these industries would have borrowed from the banks. So if there is going to be a COVID impact, so they will face a little bit of impact due to that. And banks are about 30% of the total weightage in the Sensex and Nifty. So there are some good banks which will definitely do well and come out of the situation, but there are some banks which obviously will get into a further NPA mess. So banks, as it is, have been having a great decade over the last, over the last 10 to 15 years, they've had a great time. I think banks would kind of plateau, and then you will see the manufacturing, commodities, specialty chemicals, pharma, information technology, new age businesses, home improvement sector, all these doing extremely well.
Do you think the government will come out with another, or will there be a need to come out with another round of stimulus like what they announced last year? Or what would industry or the market participants expect from the government this side? And a same question is, will there with inflation now slightly going up, do you think interest rates may be revisited towards the end of the year? Will it go up? What is your view on both?
So on the second question, the answer is no, because if you look at it, Federal Reserve has openly mentioned that till 2023, they will not be looking at any sort of tightening. So as we speak, there is about $120 billion worth of quantitative easing that is being done every month by the US, $80 billion of treasury and $40 billion worth of mortgage-backed securities are being bought by the Federal Reserve. So $120 billion worth of QE is being done by the Federal Reserve. The Japanese Central Bank and ECB have also been very, very dovish in their commentary. So no government or no central banker would basically risk any policy mistakes by trying to prematurely tighten and put a hampering on the growth perspective. So I think the overall liquidity situation will be extremely benign, and that will be a huge positive for the emerging markets, basically. In terms of your question on stimulus, rather than a full-blown stimulus package that we saw last year, we may not see a extremely comprehensive stimulus package this year. Not only India, but any country for that matter, which have gone through a second wave, has not seen any kind of special stimulus. Even in India, for the very, very marginalized society, food grains have been decided to be offered free of cost for the next 2 months. So those kinds of things are being done to take care of the extremely marginalized. But as far as the other segments are concerned, it is business as usual as things stand.
Right, thank you. I think there are a few PMS specific questions. I will come back to Balaji maybe after 2 or 3 questions on the PMS side. Uh, uh, Bijoy, there's a very fundamental question that people are asking is PMS versus mutual fund. Why PMS? Can you please elaborate, Mr. Satish or Bijoy?
I think the best person to answer this is Balaji, who has worked from both the sides of the coin.
Okay.
I can
think
Balaji,
Balaji,
say
I
that
think,
in PMS. Okay,
yeah.
Basic. Hello.
Yes, please carry on.
So PMS was a mutual fund. PMS is a very concentrated in nature by design. So there is a concentrated set of stocks. The number of stocks are around 30 to 35. Mutual funds, basically what happens is the number of stocks are quite high. They are in excess of 60 to 70 because mutual funds are a pooled vehicle. PMSs generally one can take positions even in slightly illiquid names. Some of the best returns are made in the illiquid names because you start off with those counters being illiquid, and once the re-rating happens, there is abundant liquidity in those names, and then you see the whole re-rating being captured. Some of the mutual funds, given their size, are handicapped in trying to take positions in some of the illiquid names in India. So barring the top 100 names in India, from the 101st name, the mutual fund manager has the challenge of liquidity. So he cannot, although he may like an idea, he may not be able to buy that particular idea due to liquidity. Whereas on the PMS side, considering that portfolios are managed individually and the amount of buying is small, it is very easy to build up positions in some attractive companies where the promoter holding is very high to the tune of 70 to 75%, and the free float is just about 20 to 25%. A nice position can be built, and these kind of stocks can be played at. So even in our own advantage portfolio, I remember during the last decade we did have major winners like Astral Polytechnic, which was initially picked up by us in the PMS portfolio. At that point in time, there were not many mutual funds, not a single mutual fund who were owning those stocks. So at that point in time, the market cap of Astral was 300 to 400 crores. Today, the market cap is about 25,000 crores. Today, you have significant amount of mutual funds who are holding that company. So that way, PMS gives you that advantage. So in an extremely good bull market kind of a scenario, the PMS is going to beat the mutual funds quite handsomely. In the case of a scenario where there is a little bit of volatility in the markets, and when we go through a period of lull for 6 months, 8 months or so, then we can see the situation of mutual funds outperforming PMS. But over the next 2 to 3 years, my humble view is that the markets, especially the mid and small caps, are going to be extremely better performing considering the last 2 to 3 years. So from that point of view, I think PMSs have a very, very bright opportunity to outperform the index and the mutual funds.
Thank you.
I would add one more point here in terms of transparency of the portfolio. In PMS, actually, you can see your portfolio every day. Whereas in mutual fund, you will be able to see only end of the quarter or end of 6 months. That also not the full portfolio, only the top portfolio.
Correct. Very true. Mr. Satish, the question from Mr. Samsudin to you is that when are you going to launch the ethical PMS fund from Geojit?
I saw that question, Shamsuddin sir. We will discuss that and try to take this forward. There has been some appetite for ethical funds. I mean, I think there are a couple of ethical mutual funds there and other people. But we will surely take your point into consideration. We will discuss and come back to you, sir.
There are many questions that have come up on the stock performance of the PMS and the questions regarding what is the procedures for application, and they have a lot of interest being shown. So we will reach out to each of those clients on a one-to-one basis and address all your concerns. Just to inform you that PMS is like any other form of investing. On the NRI side, it is if you do it from the NRI side, you will still have to have a PIS account. But from an NRO perspective, you can invest directly. You can maintain. You can trade on your NR account and also have a PMS account on your NR account. There is no restriction. The question on taxation is the same. It is the same the way it is taxed in your equity market transactions. There's no change to that. So all these specific questions, we will come to you on a one-to-one basis and talk to you in the next few days. Uh, the other point was on the IT sector, Balaji, is that do you think the focus will still remain on the top 3-4 IT companies in terms of performance or growth during there? Or how do you see the mid cap and the small cap segments of the IT sector performing? Which segment do you think will have to outperform this year?
So mid cap and small cap IT companies are also doing, excellent things. They are carving out their own niche because some of the things which were being done earlier by the large cap IT companies are now being replicated by the mid cap IT companies as well in the post-COVID world. I'm not saying that the large cap IT companies will not do well. They will continue to give their very steady performance. Each of the three large cap companies have different dynamics. So Wipro, for example, was underperforming TCS and Infosys, but now Wipro has a new CEO, Thierry Delaporte, who is actually driving new businesses, who is very aggressive with expansion, etc. And then there are very many mid-cap IT companies who are focusing on digital, cloud platforms, artificial intelligence, etc. So you have companies like, for example, KPIT, which is exclusively focused on autonomous driving and doing extremely well. So they are working with companies like BMW to come out with autonomous driving solutions, etc. So mid cap IT, there will be very many winners over the next 10 years. So they will, in my view, they will also either perform or significantly beat even the large cap IT companies.
Thank you. I think one of the questions that when you address an NRI segment is always on currency. I think the rupee has seen sharp correction in the last few weeks, in spite of some of the macro cues being quite positive. The oil prices are still holding, other factors. So what do you think is the reason for this currency? Yesterday, for instance, we closed at 70, close to 75 to the dollar. So where do you see currency moving in this year? Is it going to be still volatile, or you see appreciation, depreciation on the rupee?
So short term, it's very difficult to predict, but over the long term, it is very simple that given our inflation differential and interest rate differential with the US, I think our Indian currency will depreciate by about 3.5% every year on an annualized basis. So short term, you may see very sharp up moves both ways, but on an annualized basis, I think it is very prudent to factor in a 3.5% annualized depreciation on the Indian currency. So even if the INR returns were to offer on the mid cap and small cap product were offer an 18 to 20% kind of returns minus your currency depreciation, the NRI investor is still making dollar returns of about 15 to 16%, which is also extremely healthy in my opinion.
Are you expecting any corporate taxation increase or some form of COVID cess that is being spoken about for so many?
No, because it has been very clearly mentioned in this year's budget. There is not going to be any further burden on the corporate taxation from the individual investors. So we are seeing tax compliance increasing significantly in India. That is because of more investments in information technology. There is more compliance. The fraudsters are being caught. So it's now become extremely difficult to evade tax in India. So that is one of the reasons why the GST collections have been very robust. So further collections will be due to more compliance and more formalization of the economy rather than trying to increase existing tax rates. In fact, in India, to set up a new manufacturing unit, the tax rates are now pegged at about 15%, which is the lowest in the Southeast Asian region. So we are not going to see any further great increase in taxes, although there may be some tinkering here and there with the long-term capital gains, short-term capital gains. So those things keep happening here and there. But apart from that, there is not going to be a major tinkering from the tax rates point of
view. Another question is on real estate. I mean, how do you look at it from a demand perspective, or is there going to be a sort of still correction that we can expect on the real estate markets?
So real estate has been undergoing a time correction over the last 15 years in India. Depending on the cities, some cities might have done well, but if you actually go back to the prices that were prevalent in India, say sometime in 2008 or 2010, those prices are still prevalent even now. So what has happened is with this RERA Act and everything, there has been a huge consolidation amongst developers. So many marginal developers have gotten out of business. So it is now not very easy to borrow money and then use that money for funding another project, and those sorts of activities which were being done earlier on, those things are now curtailed with the RERA basically. So and interest rates today at 6% of GSEC is today we are able to get a home loan from SBA at about 6.25, 6.30%, which is the lowest in the last 10 years or so. So slowly we are seeing that the real estate demand is picking up. Also, many states, Mr. Krishnan, what they have done is that they have gone and reduced the stamp duty rates for buying of property. So in a 1 crore property, a 3% reduction in stamp duty is a huge saving of about 3 lakh rupees, which has been done by it was initially started by Maharashtra, then it was followed suit by Karnataka, and now very many states have given a breather on the stamp duty rates. So a lower stamp duty rate, 15-year low interest rates, supply having been absorbed, etc. So we are seeing that the real estate demand has picked up last year, and it is expected to continue this year. So how are we playing this? So it is not necessary that one should actually either buy physical real estate or they should necessarily buy real estate stocks in India. But there are very many proxy ways to play real estate. It can be through buying a listed company that is manufacturing furniture. It can be through buying a company that is manufacturing ceramic tiles or switches or cables, or very many other proxies that are available in India where the corporate governance is fairly high, and the promoter integrity is also very, very high.
Thank you very much, Mr. Balaji. Ms. Bijoy, there are a lot of questions regarding how PMS works, and in terms of what is the application process and other things. Do you want to say a few words on the PMS product, and then we will probably get to each client on a one-to-one basis? But if you can just briefly mention how a typical PMS product works for the benefit of the general audience, so that specific questions we will talk to them on.
I saw a few questions on a basic thing. The first thing, many questions were there. What is the minimum entry point and how much is the minimum ticket size is to be invested? So as per the as per the SEBI guidelines, this point of time in India, any investor who need to invest in PMS, the minimum ticket size is 50 lakhs. And so there was a query whether can we invest in bits and pieces or partial investment. So this point of the time, it's a single investment taken as 50 lakhs. And as and for the fund manager feels it will be invested, it will be in the company's hand. Wherever the funds are not utilized, it will be invested in liquid funds. And but single investment should come in 50 lakhs. We have explained earlier, basically, once a customer invested in PMS, he will have his own DP. All the stocks, 20 to 25 stocks, which is getting invested, will be invested in the client's DP. Every day, client will be able to watch it. He will be able to observe it. Daily, weekly, quarterly, as per his convenience. Basically, these investments, client have decision making for a partial and full withdrawal. However, which stock to be invested, which industry to be invested, when to buy, when to sell, will be done by the fund manager, which we have been entrusted and given that duty to the fund manager. Also, some questions where I saw on particular industry. So here the client have the opportunity in our PMS in case if you don't want a particular industry to be avoided or particular company to be avoided. Say, imagine there are a client who feels I don't want to get into banking industry, a client who feels I don't want to get into a tobacco industry. As per the client, you can actually give in the beginning time or during the periodical time which are places you don't want to invest. The charges is competent enough. we have both variable and fixed pay. So ideally, clients go for fixed pay when the markets are going well, whether it give 10% return, 20% return, or 30% return. Fixed pay is a flat 3% charges what we give. Variable, we have a 1% variable charge, and above the hurdle of 12%, we charge 20%. So we have both the options. I mean, I am not taking much of time now to explain this. When we get you one-to-one, we can explain to you, but it's all as per the market standards. It's as competitive as possible. Then again, for NRIs specifically, they have this query about the taxation. As Krishnan sir was saying, it is same as per the equity taxation, which is we do take both NRE as well as NRO funding. In NRO, there is, if you are giving your payment through NRO, there is no much of formalities. But if it is NRI, there is a mandatory PIS account to be followed. These are the basic questions which I saw. I hope this clears.
The other performance related questions and other specific questions, we will reach out to one of them. We'll also send to all the participants of today's webinar the PMS presentation and probably the performance deck, so that they will be able to appreciate what the product propositions that are on offer. So I think it has been a wonderful session today from the team Geojit. I must thank Mr. Satish and Bijoy to have agreed to do this seminar with us today. Thank you very much. I think we will work towards doing more such sessions going forward during the year. I think this year, I think it will be more of investor handholding would be required, whether they are in the direct equity market or in any segment of the markets. So I thank both of you for organizing the session and addressing the clients of Geojit and Burjeel in the GCC region. Thank you very much, Balaji, for your viewpoints. And I think you have given a lot of comfort in terms of the markets scenario and what we can expect. I think like you rightly mentioned, the people were looking for a major correction. That has been a sort of news flow that is happening. I think your explanations have been quite convincing to establish the fact that it's a good time to enter the market, and especially in a product like the PMS that people should consider as a right time. So if you have left out in the last 3-6 months, this is a good entry opportunity for many people to consider into a value investment proposition like a PMS. I thank all of you for addressing us today. And before I conclude, I would request Mr. Shamsuddin, the Director of Burjeel Geojit Financial Services, to say a few words. Mr. Shamsuddin.
Good afternoon, everybody. It was excellent session. In fact, our PMS investors, as well as those who are interested, to wonderful insight. So according to him and according to all of us, we have so much of confidence the future of Indian market. Definitely, we all expecting major changes into the market. Those who are entering to the PMS this particular time, it will be a good opportunity because the market is in the present shape. So investors will reward very well. So our investors will be very happy. And one of the things Mr. Krishnan already mentioned that, and so many people are asking about an ethical.
I think we are losing audio.
This part of world, so much of investment is flowing to ethical mutual funds. So definitely there will be a good return. It is open. Can you listen me?
Yeah, your voice is breaking, Mr. Shamsuddin.
Hello?
Yeah, now it's okay.
So what? Yeah. So my request is, Mr. Satish and Geojit team, please introduce the ethical fund. There will be a good demand from this region because we know that people are investing heavily in ethical mutual funds. So definitely they will try to enter in the PMS as well. And I wish all the best to your team as well as all the attendees of our webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, let me also mention that we had close to 430 people at one point logging in, and the average attendance was about 325. Thank you very much for this interesting session, and I look forward to see you in the next session. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Balaji.
Thank you.
In the last 25 years, the returns on various financial asset classes like bank deposit, gold, and real estate have multiplied several times. But there are a few select investments in the Indian capital markets that have had the potential to appreciate exponentially over 100 times. If you had known this at the right time, you would have taken the right investment decision, which is precisely why you need an expert's validated advice when it comes to investing. Welcome to Burjeel, one of the few SCA-approved financial intermediaries in UAE. We are wealth builders, guiding customers since 2001. We have serviced over thousands of them till date, and today we cater to large segments across investor groups. This speaks about our enormous goodwill and their undiluted trust. And we have earned that trust by telling, not selling. We educate you on the investment opportunities that are ideal for you. We then help you make an informed decision, impartial and unbiased, keeping your long-term goals in mind. And with us, everything is long-term, be it commitment, relationships, or success. We offer comprehensive insights across a wide range of products through a holistic approach. We ask you the most important questions, the answers to which will help you focus on your investment objectives. For example, you work for over 30 years. Are you saving enough for the next 30 years? For life goals like children's education, your daughter's wedding, or your retirement. Think about it. You work hard to earn your money. Does your money work hard enough for you? Burjeel, let's build your future. Come, let's talk.